Hello, everyone. I'm Colin Tessier of WrestleZone.com, joined by John Clark to talk about Raw and NXT. Obviously, this is a very different context than usual. Usually, we do Raw and NXT Mondays and Tuesday nights. I had a big change in my schedule. If you hadn't seen it on Twitter, I recently started a new position with Fightful. I'm staying here with WrestleZone in my heart and soul here. But I did take that position, and that meant a very big change in my schedule where I'm doing that at nights, so a direct conflict with the previous schedule. Thankfully, my co-host here, John, very flexible with me working with this new schedule. I joked before we went on the air, I think this is good for me. I won't be grumpy when it's like 11:30 on a Monday, and I'll be extra negative about some things on Raw. I'm more lively now, so I think that's good. I think this will be for the best. And this way, we had to keep doing the show. Unlike the previous shows, this will not be a beat by beat, segment by segment breakdown. If we're going to do that for Raw and NXT combined, we would be here for like 2 hours, and that's just not very practical for anybody. So instead, it's kind of going to be a 3 count kind of thing, like top 3 kind of takeaways or moments or whatever you want to say from each show. Kind of the 3 biggest aspects of the show. And that being very subjective. The 3 biggest talking points. We'll do that. Obviously, we'll still go off the comments as well if there's anything you guys want to talk about. But figure this would be a good way to do it. Good way to keep doing this show. So again, John, thank you for being flexible, and everybody, thank you for tuning in. As always, again, I want to make sure that I can still do the show, do these shows, and we'll also do post shows on the weekends as well. And then we'll figure that out as we go. And Nestle agrees. It's weird seeing us not being half asleep. It's weird getting ready to talk about Raw and not being a very late hour on a Monday. And even I think it applies to NXT as well. NXT ends earlier, but I think I'm a little more likely to be maybe a little less harsh on NXT, at least when it deserves it, with the hour. So, John, again, thank you. How are you doing on this fine Wednesday afternoon/evening?
I am doing pretty well. It's definitely a nice change to be doing this on Wednesdays now. It kind of cuts back on some of the time we're spending talking about things that might not be relevant on the show. Like Brian says, more afternoon shows. Yeah, this is actually a permanent change, Brian. So every Wednesday we'll be doing the show here moving forward, catching up on Raw and NXT. Just kind of recapping what we thought was important on the show, and then we also talk about things that like the 24/7 segments anymore. So I think it'll be a nice change, and we're obviously going to go from Raw and NXT. And I think kind of a good starting point on Raw here is the opening and closing was both kind of the same thing this week on Raw, which is nice. We had the Rey Mysterio and Finn Balor stuff, which kind of tied in there to a match that turned in, later on in the show as well. And just with this whole thing in general that we've seen with the Mysterio and Dominic and Judgment Day, let me ask you a very simple question to start out, because I want to kind of judge where you stand here on all this. Is Dominic Mysterio going to turn on Rey Mysterio anytime soon? What do you think?
Yes.
You think yes?
I think so.
So we're on the same page.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like, I don't know, sometimes WWE will do something and it'll be a red herring. They'll misdirect you. But more often than not, like once they start kind of very clearly planting a seed, they usually do deliver on that. Especially, they've been rumored to have plans to turn Dominic heel for quite a while. And for whatever reason, they haven't really put them in motion, or they've delayed them, or whatever the case may be. And now this Judgment Day thing is at least a logical way to do so. So it makes sense.
I'm just wondering, like, when's the right time that they're going to do this? Because if Dominic is going to join the Judgment Day and we're going to get Rey versus Dominic, because we saw the vignettes, they're continuing with Edge coming back at some point. We thought maybe we were going to get Edge versus somebody at SummerSlam, but the closer we get, the more they're kind of hyping up this whole thing. The more I'm starting to think that the more realistic thing here is that we're going to have Rey Mysterio taking on somebody from the Judgment Day at SummerSlam, and that's going to turn into Dominic Mysterio turning on Rey Mysterio, which will then, I think, result in Edge coming out to save Rey Mysterio, to kind of, basically put a bow on all of this, because Edge is clearly still involved in some capacity. You have to think he's going to be at SummerSlam in some manner, and And what bigger stage to turn Dominic on Ray than a SummerSlam when maybe Ray's about to beat Finn Balor or whoever it's going to be. I would assume it's going to be Finn Balor and not Damian Priest. And then there's Dominic, kind of a big swerve. What do you think about that?
Well, at the very least, in a general sense, bunch of agreement that Dominic should turn heel, necessarily agreeing Brian agreeing that Dominic should turn heel, and now the question being how. SummerSlam would make sense, ironically, or maybe fittingly. 2 years ago, SummerSlam was when Dominic debuted or had his first match against Seth Rollins, so that would make sense. More agreement that Dominic could turn and join Judgment Day. SummerSlam would make sense in a lot of ways. I think other than that, if they want to do it soon, this may be even too soon, even though they've already been planting those seeds. I guess not this upcoming Monday, the one after that. WWE will celebrate Ray's 20th anniversary, and that's the Madison Square Garden show. So that would be another kind of big opportunity to do it. But I do see that kind of big SummerSlam match as kind of a nice opportunity for a quote-unquote swerve like that, even though it's a swerve many of us would see coming. A big development like that would make a lot of sense. And yeah, I think, this is for the benefit of having a little time to kind of soak it in and think about it. When this was first happening on Raw on Monday, they were teasing that Dominic were joining, and they kept the recruiting thing. I'm like, I don't care, man. Like, I'm sorry, I don't want to be harsh, but I don't really want to see Dominic join Judgment Day. I don't think he's gonna take them to the next level or suddenly make me more interested in them. But now sitting here today, I'm like, well, at least, again, as I said a minute ago, it makes sense, and it'd be at the very least, I'm not really enjoying what he's doing as a face. So then, why not turn him heel and see how he does there? So I think that does make a lot of sense. Steven saying Mysterios versus Judgment Day at SummerSlam, maybe instead of a big singles match, maybe a tag team match.
That would work.
Then Dominic could turn heel there. I think that would make sense as well. As though I always say, it's good to have these options. I think a number of these options would be promising. You can't say they would work or not work, but at least they sound good on paper. Do you think it would make maybe more sense to be directly in a match like that, in a tag team match, or to have Dominic kind of turn by interfering somehow in a singles match that he's not really involved in?
Well, I think either way, they have to execute it the right way, and it has to make sense. Because let's be honest, Dominic has kind of relied on Ray for a majority of his career. His first match was a pretty good singles match with Rollins there, but otherwise, it's mostly been tag stuff. And if you think about it, if he does join Judgment Day, he's obviously going to be, basically fourth in line, third if you don't count Rhea Ripley. And that's fine, to kind of learn off of them and continue to develop a newer character. I saw a lot of people comparing what could possibly be doing to what Anna Jay was doing in AEW with kind of, a younger person relying on a proven stable to kind of develop your character even more. Whatever they do, I think, like people have been commenting, it's due. And like Nesha says, he skipped NXT, and of course, maybe some people have opinions if that's right or wrong. Nevertheless, I don't see him going back down to NXT anytime soon. So I'm going to say it's very due that he turns heel. That's what I hope happens. But that was definitely an interesting part of Raw to kind of tease. I don't want to say tease, but more so introduce a new story that we haven't seen before, get the Mysterios on TV more, and also get Judgment Day doing something that doesn't involve Edge until who knows when he comes back.
Well, John, you mentioned a story that we haven't seen before, one that we've seen many, many times. Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns. We know we're going to get it one more time, supposedly one final time at SummerSlam. They keep hyping it up that it will indeed be the last time. Brock Lesnar was on Raw this week. He opened up the show. Cowboy Brock was back. He was a polite cowboy, a polite beast. He said, God bless Texas or something to that effect. He was, playing with the crowd or whatever. And he was talking about how, I guess he credited Texas with saying, pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. And he said that Roman Reigns is a hog. He's going to treat him and he has hogs on his farm. And he's going to treat Roman Reigns, the tribal hog, like many of those hogs on his farm. Come SummerSlam, Paul Heyman interrupted and was hyping up. He did a very good job hyping up Brock, the guy that his opponent's facing. A little more tease of Heyman's potential where's the line or his feelings lie that we saw the last time around. That to me is kind of the more maybe the reason this still has staying power for me is at the very least the Paul Heyman thing. If not for him, like I would have a very little interest in this. At least there's that dynamic to it. And one thing that Paul said on Monday was basically, he's going to do whatever it takes to make sure that Roman Reigns is prepared for SummerSlam, including training him to shove his hand up Brock Lesnar's rear end so he could rip out his heart to beat him. I think that was kind of like the thing everybody remembered from that promo. And then Theory, Mr. Money in the Bank, interrupted, again teasing that he'll cash in Money in the Bank on Lesnar or Reigns at SummerSlam. And then he was still upset that Lesnar threw him off the pod at Elimination Chamber. Alpha Academy got involved. Did not go well for them, as you'd expect. Otis took a odd-looking F5 through the broadcast table. Brock Lesnar ended the night standing tall and getting a little more momentum, at least heading to SummerSlam, whereas we did not see Roman Reigns on Monday night. But it makes sense they would kind of stagger those out to kind of get through having two part-timers on the road to SummerSlam here.
Yeah, this kind of turned to a long exchange of basic insults and just back and forth banter until Theory came out and kind of tried to say, I haven't forgotten what you've done to me at Elimination Chamber, to try to make it make sense. But I don't think they needed to do that because it's Money in the Bank. It doesn't need to make sense. You cash in when the opportunity's right, regardless of, what's going on storyline wise. Now, the whole promo and segment itself did go on, I think, a little bit longer than it really needed to. But it was a cool moment to kind of see Lesnar manhandle Gable and Otis like that. But at the same time, we already know he's capable of doing that. I don't understand the point of Heyman doing these promos that are like building up Lesnar, like right in front of Reigns, saying like, "No, you really don't understand how like tough this is going to be for you." Like, it just something rubs me the wrong way about that. Like, Heyman should be confident in Roman Reigns. He shouldn't have to say like, I don't know if you can do this. I mean, when Lesnar's back's against the wall, he always prevails. Like, to me, it's setting up as an obvious, like, he's not going to win. If anything, I think they might both be down for the count of 10 and it ends in a draw like we've seen before. And no matter what happens, I do not think Theory is cashing in at SummerSlam. And if he does, I think he's going to fail. I think he's not going to beat Bobby Lashley at the pay-per-view, which we can circle back around to this as well because we saw Theory more later in the main event, as well as Lashley. We got a good tag match with Rollins and Theory versus Bobby Lashley and Riddle. And the main event was a back and forth action, physical ability, all men, back and forth. Obviously, Bobby Lashley and Riddle pick up the win. But there was something that everybody that watches knows about this show that didn't make sense. And I tried to make sense out of it as best I could. For those of you that might not have watched Raw or whatever, Dolph Ziggler randomly returned, I think maybe for the first time since he lost the belt on NXT to Braun Breaker, right?
There was that one return in June. Remember when he and Robert Roode showed up?
On the stage they did a promo, yeah, and he has been doing some house shows in the past couple weeks as well. But otherwise, this was basically his singles return, shall we say, because Roode wasn't with him. Now, I'm making sense out of this with a simple, he's there to put Theory over as a babyface. What do you think?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
That's all there is to it. And also, not just like the put him over the face, but also Ziggler, a guy, always capable of putting on a very good match. Like, he's been in the business for so long now. Like, he is one of the guys that you can really count on just to always have a good match. And not only have a good match, but like, I guess, unofficially coach or work with a young guy like Theory to kind of help him out and help him along. Because it's been very clear that they are very high on Theory. They want him to be, if not the next big thing, at least a big star for years to come, if all goes well. So by working with a guy like Dolph, that would help him kind of, if not improve, at least like kind of evolve a little bit as a performer, work with an established guy, as he already has been. Like, he's working with Dolph some house shows, like you said, and now working with him on TV can only stand to help him. Seems as it'll be a good match. And yeah, I mean, both guys are very talented, and I don't have any doubt about that. It just does feel convenient, I guess, in a way, because it's very clear these are the reasons why they're doing it. But like, this is the first time we've seen Dolph again, even especially if you discount the one random return from June, the first time we've seen him if you count NXT since April, if you don't count NXT, even though he was on Raw a little bit during his time in NXT. But regardless, they're kind of like dusting him off like an old toy and like just kind of like, you know, using him like this without building him up at all. So and this is what they do with Dolph. Like once a year, they dust him off and like they try to get the fans to believe like not believe that he'll win, or at least like get the fans interested in something. We know there's no chance that like Dolph's going to beat Theory. Like no, right? And that's a big obstacle that I have with it. Brian says that Dolph will put Theory over. Yeah, that's the whole point here. And as I mentioned, kind of helping him along as a performer, that literally in a skill sense. But they keep doing this, and this was the show closing angle for Raw. Like, you know, therefore it's like the main event, the most, if not the most important part, at least like your closing image. Dolph Ziggler standing tall. So will this be the main event of SummerSlam? No, but like it does feel questionable that like again they're just kind of going back to this well of Dolph Ziggler, where they keep doing this over and over again.
Like Nesha says, he deserves better, and I think he's going to get pretty over with the crowd again. So I think it's going to be a fun run. It's going to give Theory even more heat. And we also saw another spot during the match where they speared somebody through the barricade. It feels like this has become a normality for them. It feels like twice a month, 3 times a month, somebody's getting speared or clotheslined through the barricade. It's a little weird. But the match itself was good. They're continuing. Let's talk about the other side of this as well with the Riddle and Theory thing. Or not Riddle and Theory, the Rollins and Riddle thing that continues to be a back and forth that I'm assuming is going to be a SummerSlam match between them. The question I think everybody's going to wonder is, does Orton come back? Is he hurt? Is he ready to come back? Will he be a part of this? Or is this just going to be a basic match that somebody comes out with a clean win? Like, I don't understand how that would benefit either of them, either losing clean or winning clean. I don't think either of them necessarily need this feud, but they both need something to do. And I think Orton could really elevate that by giving them, something, to have a story over,
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Randy, and this is one of multiple things in WWE right now, like the Sasha Banks thing, like there hasn't really been a confirmation about what's going on. It's like Randy got beat down on TV, so match, and then they had like the quote unquote medical update. Now, if you're a cynic like me, you're like, oh, that's the storyline. But then the reports broke that he actually is hurt, and then Riddle even said on TV a couple weeks ago that Randy's going to need surgery. And that lined up with that report, but the report said that Randy might be out for the rest of the year. WWE hasn't really said anything to that effect. The commentary team at first was like, oh, we don't know if Randy's ever going to wrestle again. And again, that felt very storyline based, whereas now they're in this gray area of like storyline and also the reports that he actually is hurt. So now, as you mentioned, like, yeah, the Randy Orton factor here could make more interesting. I think there's a risk of, not this is WWE's fault, but like if the fans are hoping to see Randy and he doesn't get involved, then there's some disappointment there because there's really no way to tell if he is good to go. Steven looking into the future here, saying Randy could return the Royal Rumble and then eliminates Riddle there. Then we finally get the RK Bro implosion. I mean, John, you and I talked about that, I think, this past January, and because the report was that they were already going to be thinking about doing it then, and they kicked the can down the road, I think, multiple times at that point. So then, if that's the case, if Randy Orton is not able to come back for SummerSlam, let alone just the short-term future, I think that's definitely a good idea. I guess in my 2 cents at this point, it does feel like Randy Orton might not be good to go. Like the report was that he'll probably need surgery, that he's been dealing with a substantial issue, so he will probably be out for the rest of the year. So I'm more looking at it like this is Riddle versus Rollins, and yeah, that's not great in the sense of one guy's going to win, one guy's going to lose. It's going to be a good match. It could help Riddle get even more established as a borderline main
we
event
want
guy.
Rollins to lose yet again. He's lost. It feels like every feud this year.
I know. Oh man. Yeah, that's a hard sell. I don't like Rollins lost 3 times in a row to Cody Rhodes at PM Live events.
Lost Money in the Bank. I mean, he put up a fight with Roman because Lesnar kind of interfered himself at the Rumble, but I mean, he did lose that.
Yeah, he actually won at the Rumble. He technically
well,
beat
yeah.
I know. the technicalities, I guess technically what? He hasn't won at a premium line event since January, right? So definitely long overdue. And then, so maybe, I mean, Riddle's the kind of guy at this point. He could take a loss. We were talking about this when Cody Rhodes first went down with an injury. If they want to give Seth Rollins a title run, maybe, then that sets up Cody versus Seth again for WrestleMania. That makes sense. Steven's saying maybe beyond SummerSlam, they could drag Riddle and Seth Rollins out until Cody's back. That's a while. I don't know about that, but at least it's a good kind of intermediate length, summer / maybe early fall. Cody may not be back until Rumble time. We're just talking about Randy. Maybe Cody comes back to the Rumble, something like that. But talking about Riddle versus Seth all the way until then, that's quite a while. So at least I think it's fine for now. It's two of their top stars. It makes sense, and it'll be a good match. But yeah, definitely if Rollins loses again, that's not a good look.
Yeah, I would definitely agree that, he, and even still, they need to plan ahead with him, because I'm trying to think about what they could potentially do with him next. Bobby Lashley's there if they wanted to do a feud for the United States Championship. I mean, that would also make sense as well. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do. I mean, and basically, as far as the rest of Raw goes, it was basics, matches and stuff like that. But there is one thing I do want to make sure that we do talk about, and that was the whole Raw Women's Championship scene here, because Becky Lynch basically demanded that she gets a championship match at SummerSlam. It's going to be 1 year since she returned and beat Bianca Belair in 27 seconds. And I know you're not happy about this, and I know we talked about this before. Could they come 1 year later full circle and run it back? And you were pretty firmly against that idea, or against wanting that. I didn't necessarily want it either, but it's definitely appearing that that's what we're going to get. But and just think about this too, because remember how Carmella was involved in this last SummerSlam too. She was the original one that came out to have the match when Sasha couldn't be there. I mean, it's crazy how this whole story is like identical a year later, with Sasha's not there again anymore. And it's almost like, again, we don't know why, just like last year. We have Carmella, who's came out of nowhere again this year, put up a good match, actually won the match, well, things considered, but is not the champion. And then you got Becky Lynch in there. I mean, Colin, this is like a carbon copy of last year's SummerSlam, except this year we know Becky's going to be there. I think we're going to have a triple threat match at SummerSlam between Bianca, Becky, and Carmella. And it's crazy to me that this is like the same story last year. It's come full circle. What do you think about all this?
I mean, it's weird. You mentioned all the parallels and the similarities. There's also maybe in a more general sense, parallel of slightly more than a year ago, Bayley going down with an injury, and then Bianca versus Rhea Ripley this year getting delayed with an injury. There's a lot of weird, just like overlaps and parallels in that sense. You mentioned those specifically with SummerSlam. It's weird. Like, I don't know. It's just weird that's how the cookie crumbled in this case. But I mean, yeah, it's lots of stuff you guys are saying, triple threat match here. I guess technically, as you said, Kamala did win. So would that be a triple threat match with Becky versus Kamala versus Bianca? Like, I guess, like, I don't know. I was and still am kind of down on Becky versus Bianca one-on-one again. Because
the thing is, you could do a triple threat and get the title off of Bianca without her losing. If you wanted to give Becky the title back, you could have her pin Carmella.
Why are you trying to take the title off of Bianca already?
I wouldn't either, but I mean, who knows when Rhea Ripley's going to be ready? And if it's not Rhea Ripley, like, I feel like the only other viable person it could be is like Alexa Bliss. Like, who else would it be that could dethrone Belair?
That's probably it.
You get my point?
Yeah, no, I do. I'm just like, it's a good point. I think a lot of people would be pretty upset if Bianca lost it already. And it's only July now. That'd be the end of July for SummerSlam. I think a lot of people are hoping that this title run goes better than her last one, the one on SmackDown. And again, what you mentioned a minute ago, we're still having some of these similar obstacles. People going down with injuries happen whether on SmackDown, it's happening now on Raw. And unfortunately, kind of hamstrung in that sense. And that's just as leave Bianca as the champion. I think they should just try and weather the storm. Brian points out you've got Asuka, you got Alexa Bliss as these credible contenders to kind of weather that storm, to have Bianca have some good programs here until Rhea Ripley comes back, whenever that may be. I think Steven pointed out a couple minutes ago that she's was seen wearing a heart monitor on Instagram. She's having some health issues right now, unfortunately. But they do have a good amount of depth on Raw. Right now they're running back the thing, the Becky versus Bianca thing. Kamala always there. You got Asuka. That's a fresh matchup. You got Alexa Bliss. I think that there's definitely something there as well. So if hopefully one Bianca retains, I think those are good options as well. And overall, Steven says they need some NXT call-ups. Mandy Rose, I do think she's right there. Like the second she loses that title in NXT, they can slot her in. I think that's definitely an interesting clash. I would say her versus Bianca, or on SmackDown, her versus Liv Morgan would definitely be a pretty interesting one. And I hope they do call her. And I would say even all of Toxic Attraction, call them up together. Hopefully, I think they really should try and lean on NXT a little bit more because they do have a lot of talent there. Overall, John, we talked about these are the big hits of Raw. But overall, what do you think of the show, including maybe anything that we haven't quite touched on?
I thought that it was overall a pretty good show. I mean, we didn't really get too much about next week other than we know Logan Paul is going to be there. So I think we can probably save the talk for that for next week since we know, that's going to be a big development. I assume that match will be made official next week as well. I mean, I thought it was a pretty good show. I'd give it an average 7 out of 10. I am willing to kind of see how they continue to build towards the pay-per-view here. It's probably going to be a fairly good build. I mean, they only have 2 weeks, and let's not forget one of those 2 weeks is going to be Madison Square Garden, which they like to usually go all out for as well. So overall, I would give it, like Steven Chambers says, decent Raw. Brian says 7. I also say 7. What do you say?
No, it was 7. I thought it was fine, especially by Raw standards. And that's just saying 8. Glad Dolph is back. We'll talk more about Logan Paul next time, but the idea that maybe we'll see some of that tag team match because we did see this alliance. We know the Miz and Ciampa alliance now. Maybe if they throw AJ Styles in there, very odd pairs of teams there of Logan and AJ.
Colin, I ran a survey on my Twitter. I don't know if you saw this, where I asked my followers and such, who is supposed to be the good guy / who are you going to cheer in this feud? Is it going to be Logan Paul or The Miz? Okay. And it got, I believe, around 130 responses in the 24 hours that it was up. And crap you not, it was like literally 51% to 49% in favor of Logan Paul. So my conclusion is fans do not know who they're supposed to cheer. And fans don't probably want to cheer either of them.
I mean, I don't really want to cheer the Miz when he's out there talking about his big balls, John. Like that's a hard sell. It's a hard thing to kind of get behind.
Did you buy the T-shirt yet?
No, somebody's got to stop that merch team. Okay, but I also they're not afraid. All right, they're gonna go out there and they know.
I remember they released a T-shirt that said "Nobody's Bitch," and it was only released for like a week and a half last year, and I did get that shirt. How long is this? I think it says my name is Massive Balls or something like that. I don't know how long that one's going to last, but the Nobody's Bitch was 1.5 weeks. I think this one might be able to beat that.
No, just saying, get the shirt. I will not get a shirt that says I have massive balls on it. All right, that's not what I'm about. It takes a lot for me to shell out some money and give it to the E. Okay, it's got to be for comparison, I didn't even get an Index shirt. Okay, my beloved Index on NXT, I didn't even get that shirt. All right, I'm a little cheap. It takes a lot for me to shell out money for a shirt to support the WWE. I'm sorry, they're not gonna take my hard-earned money on a shirt that says my big balls. Not gonna happen. Let's get off of that. All right, let's talk about NXT. Plenty of stuff to get into there. Let's dive right in. I know DJ just hopped on. I know he's going to have some stuff to say about this because the show ended with what may not have been a shocking swerve, but definitely a memorable one. So I guess for context, the show opened with Roxanne Perez laid out in the cursed NXT parking lot. People just don't go in the parking lot. Bad stuff always happens there. People keep going to the parking lot, and it never ends well. Roxanne Perez got attacked. And it was big whodunit mystery throughout the show. It was did you do it? Do you know who did it? Nobody know who did it. And in the show, Mandy Rose comes out scheduled to defend her NXT Women's Championship against Roxanne Perez. And even Nikita Lyons said, hey, if Roxanne is good to go, I'll do it. Cora Jade, Roxanne's tag team partner, with whom she won the women's tag team titles 1 week ago, said, well, my dear friend is hurt, and I want to take her place. If she's not good to go, I'll fight you. I'll get revenge for sweet Roxanne. Roxanne limps out to the ring, and obviously Cora is, of course, she's thrilled to see her friend. Her friend's gonna fight like a champion and try and get that title. It's a good match with Mandy and Roxanne. Roxanne always impressing me. I think she's really one of the bright stars they have. And then out of the blue, John, Cora Jade just attacked Roxanne from behind, directly cost her the match. I'll pause there because some people, the second Roxanne was laid out, started to think like it was Cora. Like that's like people like had that sense like it was probably Cora. Don't know who else it would be. I was gullible. I was like, oh, it's probably Toxic Attraction. Lo and behold, I don't think they confirmed it was Cora, but they definitely planted all the seeds that it was probably Cora that attacked her. So then Mandy retains, thanks to Cora Jade, and then to really drive in the point home, Cora Jade gets in the ring. She goes to hit Roxanne with her skateboard, and the thing just like falls apart because I guess it was gimmicked or whatever. And Steven says that was a little funny. Definitely not an ideal execution of that moment there. And she was saying that she brought Roxanne to NXT. She called Roxanne selfish. And she just beat her down, and that's how the show ended. So, John, they turned Cora Jade heel 1 week after Roxanne and Cora won the women's tag titles. I don't know. Some people seem to be divisive at the very least. I'll say that.
Yeah, it was almost telegraphed the way this happened that Jade was going to turn against Roxanne. I think Toxic Attraction laying out Perez was too obvious, and anyone else would have been kind of pointless or not really had the same impact. Even if this heel turn was predictable, it worked, I think, because of the story that they're telling. I think over the past couple months, because Roxanne Perez is fairly new to NXT compared to Cora Jade has built herself up as a pretty good competitor, but she's never had success alone as a singles competitor. But if you look at Roxanne Perez, who has had plenty of success as a singles competitor, I think the writing was on the wall. It was only a matter of time before Cora Jade got jealous and it made sense. But here is where I think it kind of is a shame. The women's tag titles are going to suffer now because they're either going to forfeit them or be forced to defend them in a match in which they will not retain because they will not be on the same page. Um, I don't know. Is this finally the moment where we see? I don't even know how to pronounce their names. It's Katana Chance, and is it still Caden Carter? It still is Caden Carter.
Yeah.
Maybe they finally have their opportunity. So I don't know. They're building up Mandy Rose again as the champion, and I think maybe it's Nikita Lyons now who's going to have her turn to be the one to dethrone Mandy Rose. I don't really know, but I don't. I'm divisive on this as well because I like the story, I like the direction it's going, but I don't like that one, the women's tag titles have to suffer, and two, now that these two are going to feud, somebody's going to have to lose. I mean, and I think it's probably going to be Cora Jade, even though she's the heel and she's suffered as a single star for so long. And like DJ says, the goth girl is back. I assume she's going to go back to a kind of a gimmick like that before. I've seen people kind of giving negative feedback on the way her character is portrayed as this makeup plastered, not necessarily Barbie, but like girl that's meant to be pretty, and that's not what she had done in the past. That wasn't her before. And I know you certainly know more about both Cora Jade and Roxanne Perez than I do because I didn't watch them either in AEW or Impact or Ring of Honor or anywhere they were before. So this is more of like the ball's in your court in this one as far as like where you think this is going to go in the future and what you want to see unfold here between these two.
I mean, as I mentioned a minute ago, of course, DJ very happy that, as he says, the goth girl is back. I know he's happy to have potentially this version of Cora back. I would assume that's going to be, we're going to see some version of that because that's what she was before this version that we saw in NXT. Admittedly, I don't know Cora Jade or back previously Elena Black as well. I knew Roxanne as Roxy in Ring of Honor. So I'm more familiar, more biased in that sense of like, oh, I want her to do well. And I've been impressed with her so far. But this does like add the question of like, and then I think a lot of the reaction to this was, if you knew you're going to do the story, the next week of having Cora Jade attack Roxanne, her tag team partner, again, 1 week after they won the tag titles, why would you have them win the tag titles in the first place? Like that it doesn't make sense. Like that, it definitely doesn't give the vibe of even remotely long-term booking, or even like, a week or two out. It's like, what are we doing here? Because then someone just mentioned, oh yeah, Steven says you could have, Brian says you should have given the titles to Chance and Chance and Carter. But Steven says going forward, he thinks like Chance and Carter will get the tag belts, will have tag attraction, and potentially going to the main roster. That was my problem. It's like, if this was the plan, if we like to think that there's even 2 weeks out of planning, I like to think it's more than that. Like ideally, at least could be a month of like they know where they're going. Why would you have them win the titles when you're gonna do this? Obviously, I would assume that they're not going to hold on to them. So then he mentioned,
and we also talk about the fact that there's not going to be a SummerSlam takeover. It appears like we thought. We have no idea when the next one's going to be, right? So did they say?
They reported that I think it was Dave Meltzer reported the plan would be, I think it's like August 20th or so. It's right on there. It's not SummerSlam weekend, but it is. They do have one reported lined up for mid to late August potentially.
And I assume it's probably just going to be at the Performance Center because it wouldn't make kind of any sense to have their own. But who knows? I mean, I thought maybe they would try to go overseas, maybe with Clash at the Castle and do something over there. But like you said, with the tag titles kind of being lost in the fold, I don't know how I feel about it. But we'll see what they do. And also, I mean, it's glad to see the women being highlighted on the show anyway.
No, of course. But with that in mind, like and as DJ says here, and this is another issue I had with it, they took a story that could have been drawn out over, at the very least, a number of weeks. They probably, if they really want to, stretch it out a month, 2 months. Like they probably could have gotten at least to that August event, what do you want to call it, and kind of drawn it out, built it up, got the viewers invested in it, planted a couple seeds, hinted at it, and then executed it. And that's a well told story. Whereas this last Tuesday, they won. I think it was the main event. The show ends. They won the titles. They're happy as clams. It's a good time. Everyone's happy. What happened in a week? Like Roxanne said she wanted, or maybe it wasn't the main event, but it was last week's show. Then Roxanne said she wanted to use a title shot in that backstage interview. All right, and they go off to celebrate their win. Everything's good. Everything's fine. No hints, and I'm not saying that sometimes they go the opposite direction of beating us over the head or something. But 1 week, and they go a 180 of like, oh, suddenly Cora Jade's upset with the person that was supposed to be her best friend, to the point that she just brutally attacked her and did all of that. So that was another issue I had with it, of like, if you're gonna do that, don't do it like the week after one of the titles. Like at least draw it out a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it would make sense to do it that way, but like we said about the women's division in general in NXT, it's nice to have them be like kind of part of the main event, and actually their tag titles, they were actually at least doing something with them before, when on the main roster they've been non-existent. So
yeah, so at the very least, I'm hopeful that we'll have some kind of tournament or something, if this is the direction that we go. DJ says it's not her best friend in real life. I mean, I got the impression that they're at least friends. Like I know I feel pretty sure they go back a number of that's not a number of years. Like they at least worked together. I thought they were like, unless I was totally wrong on that, I thought they were at least friends. Is like I remember when Roxanne like debuted or signed, like, or like tweeted about it or something like that. I don't know. Regardless, I think it could like execution of this first step, not great. I think it could be a good storyline. As you said, it's good to have the women's division here getting highlighted like that. Overall, it's definitely a loaded division in general. One member of that we saw in one of the nights, several cinematic like vignettes, and this is something I wanted to touch on. We saw Tiffany Stratton. She got her nails done at the salon. This is one of several, like, not just like pre-taped vignettes, so as we see like backstage interviews and stuff. I'm talking like taped. Again, cinematic comes to mind. Like she was at the nail salon. We had Pretty Deadly, Briggs and Jensen at a bar, kind of thing. We had Kamala Hayes and Trick Williams like celebrating at their penthouse, and all of them were interesting. I like shaking it up. I like doing something a little different. But at some point, like, it felt like this, the balance definitely leaned to, this was not, I was joking, it's not a wrestling show, but not even like a sports entertainment show. This was like more of a drama, or like not wrestling based, not saying at all, because there were some wrestling shows, but like it felt like the ratio was definitely off, in the sense that there are a lot of these tape vignettes where it was like, to me, in a way, it almost lost the focus in a way. Like they're doing so much of these, whereas I like it best when they're kind of when they're used well, and then they're used meaningfully. Whereas like you do for every character, it starts to lose its impact, and it starts to be less special.
It's like SmackDown last week that only had 13 and a half minutes of wrestling on a 2-hour show. It actually had more minutes of commercial break than it did of in-ring wrestling. And I have been criticized before for my opinion on watching wrestling in general, where I'm fine with the storytelling, promo, soap opera aspect of it. So it doesn't necessarily bother me to have maybe one episode in however many years that only had 13 and a half minutes of actual in-ring wrestling. With this NXT show, it's a little different, as you said. Like, well, we still had quite a bit of matches, but at the same time, it felt like in between every match we had a vignette or a promo or a teaser or something where it did kind of draw the focus away from the wrestling and get your mind thinking about something else. Where the next match started and you're still thinking about what you just saw. One of those being that cryptic. We saw the 8, 10, 11 last week, and then this week we got the Wordle. There was a Wordle puzzle of different wrestlers that had, I think one was Becky, one was Apollo Crews, one was Zion Quinn, and we only know that I think it was the O or the C was in the right spot, and the O wasn't in the right spot, and I could not make a 5-letter word that wouldn't make any sense. But Colin, what do you make of these random QR codes that lead you to basically nonsense? I'm very confused at this point, but I feel like I said last week, and I stand by it. I think they know what they're going for, but we have no idea.
Yeah, man, I have no idea. Again, the last week the dates was at least a hint of like, okay, it seemed like it was the date. It was like I think 8-10 or something like that, and it didn't line up in terms of like, oh, this episode of NXT or whatever. But like at least it was something. That's just as the codes are a headache. And yeah, the Wordle. My fiance can tell you I'm terrible at Wordle. Like I can't even decipher the actual words. Like, so they have this like fake Wordle on the show. Like I don't know what it's about. I don't know what they're going for. And so yeah, I think one of them was like Quinn. Then a bunch of other like Easter eggs or hints and stuff like that. I don't know. I don't have the patience to like sit around and be like, oh, I just want to know. Like, I hope that we find out soon, because again, this was at least a little more in depth of a hint. Well, like honestly, the 2 dates could have been anything. This was like at least he gave something to work with. But even then, I'm like, I'm stumped. I don't know where it's going. If I had to guess, maybe it's related to, as we were talking earlier, the next premium live event, whatever. Somehow, I don't know, but I don't know. One mystery that has been cracked, though, to mention it briefly, we don't know if it's a kid or not, but we did get another vignette for Axiom. And John, all right, this is right up my alley. Axiom loves comic books. This guy, like he says, he likes the comics, kind of let him, transcend reality and escape to another world. And I tweeted about it, and I realized it sounded sarcastic, and I was being serious. Like, I'm here for this. I like comic books. Like, that's cool if it's done in a way that's like, if that's actually kind of cool. If it's like corny or goofy, like Nikki ASH or whatever, maybe not. But like on paper and in a general sense, I'm here for that. So we know he'll be debuting next week. We know that Pretty Daly will be facing Briggs Jensen for the UK tag titles next week as well. There's a couple other things additionally, but I don't know. I'm curious about that. If it is a kid, I remember I was impressed with him in the ring, and this could be kind of a fun character. So I'm here for that.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting for sure to see how how just the character develops, because it could be so many different things when you're just saying comic books and superheroes. It could be because obviously you got the hero, you got the villain. I assume he's going to be a good guy. He's going to be wearing a mask and all that thing that we saw. And Nesher, I mean, they didn't confirm it was him, but everybody knows it's him. You said it was his voice and stuff. Yeah. definitely was him. I'm interested to see where it goes, but they didn't announce his opponent, did they? They just said
No,
he'd be
just
in
his
action
debut.
next week.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. So I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how they kind of, because usually they bring somebody in and they put them in a squash match where they win. Is that what they'll do this week? I assume they probably will, but who knows?
Yeah. One more thing to focus on as we're talking about Axiom's upcoming debut here. They did announce JD McDonough, whatever, versus Cameron Grimes next week. Cameron Grimes on the show this week, talking about his loss to Braun Breaker at Great American Bash. And he was saying, sometimes you can do everything right and you still come up short. And he said, sometimes you can work hard and do everything right and you just come up short. And they said that keeps happening to him. He lost the North American title. And so he just keeps losing. And he said maybe he's destined to be a loser. And then at that point, I kind of thought that Joe Gacy might come out because it seemed like a little something there. Instead, JD McDonough / Jordan Devlin came out and said that Grimes is old news. He's the new guy in town. He's the new star everyone's talking about. He was the one that left Braun Breaker lying last week. He took a cheap shot at Grimes. Grimes got the better of him. They'll have a match next week. Fortunately, this feels like a pretty clear win for JD McDonough and a clear loss for Cameron Grimes because they really had JD attack Braun Breaker. So feels like that's where they're going to be going. This will be a good way to have him get a big win over the guy that was just challenging for the NXT title because that feels like the next step here for Braun Breaker.
Yeah, I mean, looking at what they're going to do with Braun Breaker, I mean, if they are planning on turning him heel, like they need to do it like now, like not wait. He can't just be a stepping stone for Braun Breaker's opponents, and it doesn't make sense. The fact that they already have JD McDonough and they did the name change and everything doesn't make sense to me. He's clearly going to be the next opponent for Braun Breaker, and he could possibly be the one to even dethrone him, depending on how fast they want to get Breaker out of them. So and that match will be good. Like Brian says, I do think it will be a very good match between the two of them. So, and next week will be good as well, like Steven said, it should be. And I don't know what to expect as far as next week. I assume JD's going to win cleanly. He would need to, I think, to kind of progress the story with Breaker. But who knows if Breaker could interfere and give Grimes the win too to also set the feud up that way. Either way, it's going to be interesting. As will this comment from DJ. Joe Gacy's pals, buddies, dyads, whatever you want to call them, are going to be unmasked next week. I think it's Grizzled Young Veterans. What do you think?
Yeah, that seems like a lock. And I think I talked about this a couple weeks ago. I think they're already at the point where like they've drawn out enough where if it's not Grizzled Young Veterans, I don't know who else it could be, but like it's already I think it's going to be a little disappointing because I'm not trying to knock Grizzled Young Veterans, but like they're not this big huge name that's like make everyone super excited. Like they're very talented. I enjoy their matches. I think they work very well together. They're a very good team. But it's like, is that like, I guess to quote Roman Reigns, is that going to move the needle? Like, no, like I think it'll be good for him. But I always think they always got the short end of the stick in general. They never got to be the champions on NXT Prime. So I think this could be beneficial. But like, is it good? Am I all that excited for it? Especially because it's been pretty obvious that that's who they are. Not so much, but I'm glad we'll always finally know because again, I don't love all these like mysteries that I've no one to say. I'm like they just keep kind of doing these things, and I like to know things. I like them just give me a little mystery, but then pay it off. This has been they've been masked for a couple weeks now, and we'll find out who they are next week. It does feel very likely that it's going to be Girls and Young Veterans here, but we will be here next Wednesday to talk about it. As this is the first version of this new format here. Thank everyone for tuning in. I was very encouraged that all of you tune in on a Wednesday evening / afternoon. Obviously, I know it's definitely a big change. Quickly, do you want to grab your NXT rating before I forget, John? Because it was a bit of a mixed bag of a show.
Yeah, I'd go with a 6.5, a little below average. It wasn't really. It was hard to keep my attention on some of it. But I'm interested to see how they build to this next pay-per-view live event, whenever it will be.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. I think they're setting some stuff in motion here that could be could be pretty exciting. And potentially, at the very least, the match is always going to be good. So hopefully, we'll know more about that next week. Potentially, whether it's that event or at least the more clear direction of the show. National the 7, Steven the 6.5, Brown the 7.5, and National says it was decent. Compared to I just gave Raw a 7. I'll go for like a 7 for NXT. It was fine. It was nothing too egregious. I can't complain all that much. Deidre was 7 as well. Definitely, again, for better or worse, it left people something to talk about with the Cora Jade thing. So we'll see how that plays out next week. And as I was saying a minute ago, I do want to thank you all so very much for tuning in. Again, I know it's a big change, but I'm excited about it. I think it'll be beneficial. It's earlier, so less grumpy. It gives us some time to kind of let the shows digest. So we're kind of giving it a little more substantial feedback rather than kind of in the moment. And there's something for that as well. But I think this could be very good. And again, John, I thank you for being flexible and working with me. Because I'm happy to keep doing the show, and I want to keep doing the shows. I think that's the best way to do it. So I'm looking forward to that. Tentatively planning to do a new show on Friday, just kind of general news, not just WWE, but kind of more a general umbrella, kind of just things that are going on. Because the world of wrestling news never stops. There's always something going on, something to talk about. So we're going to try that out probably on Friday. I haven't quite nailed down a time yet. So the second I do, I'll let everyone know in a tweet and stuff like that. But again, thank you all so very much. We really do appreciate it. We do the show for you because, John, here at WrestleZone, we do one thing, but all others, tell me what that is.
Enjoy wrestling.
Indeed. Thanks for listening, everybody.